Today is 27th of October. This is a day that many Airbnb hosts will remember forever because this is the day of a big change. Your host fee is going up from 3% to 15.5%, and that has a number of implications, especially when it comes to your pricing. If you want to be receiving the same net payout before and after, you are going to have to implement a markup on your Airbnb channel. It seems like there's some confusion around what the right number is.
And what I'm recommending to all of our clients is...
Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome.
Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad. Get paid for your pad.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Get Paid for Your Pad. This is an episode of Rev Up where we talk about revenue management. Today's guest is a very special guest because he's actually my colleague, Mr. Miles Chu. He's one of our revenue managers. He joined the team a few months ago. So, Miles, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
The Freewyld hat looks really good on you, man, I have to say.
I know, it's so nice. They're really good.
How was your experience at the VRMA that we just got back from last week?
Whew. VRMA this year was a breath of fresh air. Like, I feel like the overall layout was better. Like, the energy just felt different. Like, I've gone to the last 4. I think this is my 4th VRMA that I've been to. So I've gone to like the last 3. And I definitely feel like this one was the best one yet. And I'm super excited about next year's.
Yeah, next year's is going to be in Nashville. It's going to be a little bit more fun than in Vegas, at least at my age. For the younger people out there, Vegas might be more fun. But for me, walking in at 8 in the morning, you're walking up to the conference room and you're walking past the people that are drunk, smoking cigarettes, and throwing money in slot machines was, I don't know, it's just a bit of a weird combination, I felt.
Oh yeah, it's always a little fun and weird being in Vegas because it's all just like, it really is a city that doesn't sleep. And it's like, oh yeah, you wake up at 6, 7, 8 in the morning, get ready for the conference and go down, and there's people gambling, and then you leave the conference and there's people gambling, and then you go out, have dinner, come back, there's people gambling. It's a city that really does not sleep.
Right. I'm excited about next year as well. Nashville is such a great town to do a conference because it's a lot more fun, for me at least, to walk around Nashville and downtown area, go into some local bars and listen to the music versus the craziness of the Vegas Strip. It's also very hard to get around, right? On the Strip walking. It's like you can walk for hours and get lost, and you want to get somewhere, you got to find like a crossing or like a bridge, and it's just a bit of a nightmare out there. So yeah, I'm excited about Nashville.
Oh yeah, I'll say, especially with Nashville being kind of more of like a historic city too, I'm super excited. Like, just go see the sights and go walk around, go to all the really cool spots, get a little access to the music scene that's out there. Super excited.
Yeah, 100%. We already reserved our booth for Freewyld. So this year at the VRMA in Vegas, we had a booth, and which was a lot of fun, which was awesome. And so we already reserved our spot for next year. So put it in your calendar. VRMA in Nashville next year is going to be a big one. It's also going to be a little bit more doable for me, at least, with the time zone difference being in Spain. Vegas is like 9 hours. So it's like I get to Vegas, and by the time I adjusted to the time zone, it was time to fly back to Spain, and now I have to adjust to the time zone here again. So it's just it's just so crazy. Anyway, let's talk about revenue management, a big topic for today. Today is 27th of October. This is a day that many Airbnb hosts will remember forever because this is the day of a big change. Your host fee is going up from 3% to 15.5. And if you were paying 15.0, then it goes up to 15.5. So in that case, it doesn't really change a whole lot. And this is just for PMS connected hosts, right? The mom and pop hosts who are not using a PMS, they're still in the 3% model. Is that right?
Yeah, if they're still on the 3% model, I believe they put out notice until December. And if you are a brand new host that is starting, like you haven't even made an Airbnb account yet, then you are going to be subject to the 15.5 starting today.
So pretty much by December 1st, everyone's going to be on this 15.5% fee. Now, there are some exceptions, like Brazil, it's 16% for some reason. I don't know why Airbnb likes to squeeze that extra 0.5% out of the Brazilians, but that's what what it is. And I think there might be some other regions in the world where there's some different rules, but for the most part, you're going to be on a 15.5% host fee. And that has a number of implications, especially when it comes to your pricing, because if you want to be receiving the same net payout before and after, you are going to have to implement a markup on Airbnb, on your Airbnb channel. So Miles and I've been nerding out with Excel sheets to calculate all these numbers. I've seen a lot of different numbers going around. It seems like there's some confusion around what the right number is. And so today in this podcast, we want to provide you with some clarity. But first of all, if you're not aware of this, I mean, it's pretty hard not to be aware of this because everyone's been talking about it, right? But if you're not aware of it, any bookings that happen today or after today are going to be subject to this host fee. So there's going to be a couple months where you're looking at all your bookings in your calendar, and some of the bookings you're paying 3%, and some of the bookings you're going to be paying 15.5%. But either way, starting today, if you want to receive the same net payout on a booking, you have to increase your Airbnb markup. So the markup that you send, that you add, the additional percentage that you add to the rate that you're sending to Airbnb versus other channels, right? So let's say you're on Direct and you are on VRBO and you are on Airbnb. So those are free channels. If you're currently not using any markups, then starting today, you would have to put a 14.79% markup on Airbnb to receive the same net payout. And we'll walk you through how we come up with this number. Now, some PMSs, you can't do decimals on the markup, right? Some PMSs you can't. Do you know
some you can,
which
some
ones
you can't.
by any chance?
Not off the top of my head. I know a lot of them will allow you to do at least up to 2 decimal points. The funny thing with numbers is there's more than 2 decimal points. So it just depends on which software you're running and what software you have. So experiment with what you can do in your settings and go from there. But most that I've seen so far, like the standard ones, I've seen up to 2%, like up to 2 decimal spots.
But 15% is pretty close to 14.79. So it's not the end of the world if you have to do 15, right? But let me walk you through the numbers here, because like I said, there's been some confusion. Okay. So imagine you send $100 as your nightly rate to your PMS from your pricing tool, or maybe you just put $100 in your PMS as the nightly rate. And let's say you do not have a markup on Airbnb. Then if somebody books your unit on Airbnb, they're going to be paying $100 for the nightly rate. Airbnb is then going to add on a guest service fee. There's a cleaning fee that your guest will also pay. And then what Airbnb does, it takes a 3% commission on the nightly rate and the cleaning fee. So the total of the nightly rate plus the cleaning fee. So in this case, let's just assume for simplicity, we have a $0 cleaning fee. So the rate is $100. So Airbnb takes $3 and you are left with $97. Now, starting today, if you push that same $100 to Airbnb, what's going to happen now is Airbnb is going to take 15.5% out of that 100. And so now you are left with $84.50 instead of $97. So we need to push a markup to Airbnb. We need to increase our rate on Airbnb so that we are still left with the $97. And the percentage that you have to put as a markup on Airbnb, if your markup was 0, is exactly 14.793. There's another 6 decimals or so, and Miles and I found out today. But this is close enough. 14.79. Let's just call that the magic number, right? And if there's any other nerdy people listening, the way to calculate that number is to simply divide the old host payout of 97. If you divide that by 84.5, the new payout, then you get to that. Essentially, you get to 114.79, and then you subtract 1, and then you have 14.79 is the percentage. I don't know if this makes sense. Probably not for the people who are not familiar with looking at spreadsheets. But anyway, this is how you calculate it. So bottom line is, if you don't have an Airbnb markup in place before yesterday, if you didn't have one, if it was 0, then you got to change it to 15%. If you can put decimals, change it to 14.79. And that way you are going to be receiving the same amount of dollars before and after. Now here's where it's got a little tricky. What if you already have an Airbnb markup in place? Because one thing I noticed is there's been a number of people that have been arguing that the markup should be 18.34%. I've seen that number going around quite a lot. And I was curious, like, where is that number coming from? But I found out where that's coming from. And so the reason that number came up is because a lot of hosts already have a markup on Airbnb to cover the 3% host fee. And if you wanted to cover the 3% host fee by marking up your Airbnb prices, then you would have had to mark it up by 3.09%. So because essentially if you increase that 100 nightly rate, if you increase that by 3.09, then you get to $103.09, and then you take 3% of that, and then you're back up to 100. So that means if you're pushing out 100 from your pricing tool, you're marking it up by 3.09%, you would receive exactly $100 on that booking. Okay, so for the people that already have a markup of 3.09%, that's the case, then you need to change it from 3.09 to 18.34. Now, if you, again, the decimals, not always possible, but if you just change it to 18% and you're pretty close. And the same is true for if you had a 3% markup, you would change it to 18 and you would be roughly receiving the same net payout. Now, Miles and I actually created a calculator that we want to share with you guys, because if you're wondering, hey, my markup was 10% before, what should it be now? Well, we can calculate that for you. If you go to freewildfoundry.com/markup, so first we were going to put it under Airbnb host fee change markup calculator, but then we realized, okay, this is going to be really difficult for people to type in the URL. So we decided to do freewildfoundry.com/markup. Then you get direct access to our little calculator here that I have on the screen. So just to give some examples, if your old markup was 10%, your new markup should be 26.27. So, do you think people are getting confused yet?
Probably. We'll see.
What's up, guys? Eric here. And before we dive into this episode, I want to introduce you to our podcast sponsor, Freewyld Foundry. Freewyld Foundry is a revenue management service, white glove, high touch service for the top 1% short-term rental operators. We're currently managing over $60 million in bookings, 1,700 listings worldwide, and we are growing very, very quickly. Our RPM program is a done-for-you revenue management service, and I want to invite you, if you are a short-term rental operator that's doing $1 million or more, or maybe about 15 listings or more, head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for one of our free revenue audit reports. This is where Jasper and the team will actually take a look at your pricing strategy, audit all of your Airbnb listings, and let you know if you're leaving money on the table. So this is free to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Head over to freewildfoundry.com and apply for your free audit report.
I think the biggest thing to note is, when in doubt, always look at what your current setup is and go from there. If you currently already are marking your rates up and you're netting out to where if you push out $100 to Airbnb, you're getting $100 back, ideally you want to stay there. So that's when the 18.3432 comes into play. And then on the vice versa, if you're already getting $97 as a payout, obviously that $3 isn't hurting you. Do the 14.79. That'll get you the closest to that same amount, and it'll be a win-win situation for you. You get to be as competitive as possible while maintaining the margins that you're currently getting at the same rate.
Exactly. And, another question that comes up a lot is, some people, they're saying, oh, Airbnb is now making a lot more money. But if you calculate it, they're basically just getting the fee from the host versus the guest, and we're all increasing our rates. So in the end of the day, if you calculate how much does Airbnb get, how much does the host get, how much does the guest pay, if you change your markup the way you should, or if the way to keep it all the same, then nothing really changes. In the end of the day, the payouts are still the same. The guest pays the same, Airbnb makes the same, we make the same, so nothing really changes. So I'm wondering why there's so many people saying, oh, Airbnb is charging us more. Well, they are. At least for the hosts that were paying 15%, now they're paying 15.5%. But from going from free to 15.5, in the end of the day, we're basically going to make the same.
Oh yeah, and it's especially with the markups, we're going to be making roughly the same amount. The biggest difference from the guest perspective is just going to be, you can kind of see their progress over the last year, where they moved from having itemized breakdown when you first search to kind of consolidating everything to saying, oh yeah, here's just one line item price. And now you kind of have to dig to even see, all right, how much is Airbnb charging as a service fee from the guest perspective? So I think it's just kind of in line with those steps that they've been taking since easily late late last year, beginning of this year. Guest transparency and simplifying it down to where, all right, the price that you see is the price. There's no fluctuation. Like, on the previous model where the guest would pay the service fee, there was a slight fluctuation. Airbnb says it was somewhere between, I want to say the numbers were between 14 and 16% as a variable fluctuation, but now becomes a fixed 15%. Well, 15.5% charge to us, the host. So
Right.
it's just moving it from one side to the other. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense because they're basically like making it consistent across different regions, right? Because I think that's confusing to the guest maybe sometime. Like, hey, if I book in this country, I pay a guest fee, and if I book in this country, I don't pay a guest fee, and everything. The price breakdown always depends on like where you're booking, and if the host is using a PMS or not, and all these different factors. So I think simplifying it, I think it's in the end of the day is in everyone's best interest. Like this is better to simplify. Keep it simple, Kiss. Keep it simple. So one thing that is also going to be interesting is if you are charging a property management fee, if you're managing for property owners. Now this change in host fee may also affect your payout and your owner's payout. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated because it depends on how you calculate your fees, right? Some property managers calculate their fee over the rental amounts. And in our example, like the $100. And some property managers, they do the split after taking out the OTA commission. So they would take the $97 and split it after the $3 commission was taken out by Airbnb, right? So depending on what model you're using, you may have to change your property management fee a little bit because otherwise the owner is going to be making a little bit different amount of money and you're going to be making a different amount of money, right? So the split is going to change. And what even complicates this further is that for a couple months, like we mentioned before, you're going to have bookings under both models, right? And now good luck calculating how much your owners be getting, and it's going to get very complex. So we honestly we're still kind of brainstorming like, hey, what's the best solution to this? So maybe we'll do another podcast this week to dive more into the property management fee. Yeah, it's a little complicated, right? All this stuff.
Cool, yeah. And even speaking off of the property management fee, one other thing that I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about, it's also going to affect your clean fees, any other like resort fees, service fees that you provide. So if you usually get deducted a 3% commission on, your cleaning fee, well, a lot of people do cleaning fees based on a piece rate. So now all of a sudden, instead of you getting, if it's $100 cleaning fee, instead of you getting $97 and you paying a cleaner $60, now you're only getting $84.50 and paying a cleaner $60. So then that kind of cuts into your margins there. And then if you have any like HOA mandated resort fees or anything like that, this tends to happen more in like your more traditional beach markets with resorts and things like that. If you have a fee that you collect as a part of your rent that you pass through to the HOA on behalf of the guest, well, if it's $100 fee or like, it's $100 for the entire stay, now you're getting less and you're going to have to end up eating into some of that cost. So it's important to go through and make sure that you're updating all of those as well to make sure that you're whole and you're not losing out on potential holes in your bucket of revenue.
That's a very good point. I almost forgot about that. Any fees that we charge, we have to mark them up by that same 14.79%. So whether it's a cleaning fee, a pet fee, any fees, right?
If you weren't already, whatever you do for your nightly rate, I recommend just doing the same for your fees. Unless you were marking up your nightly rate and not marking up your fees, that's the only time that you might have a discrepancy. But whatever, if you're used to getting $100 as a clean fee payout, then do the 18.34. If you're used to getting 97, do the 14.79 and just kind of go from there.
Yeah, so definitely mark up change your cleaning fees, otherwise you're going to be out of pocket. By the way, like, does this affect also Texas, like TUT Texas?
I don't thought about that yet. Because they usually, so with Airbnb, if it's a pass-through tax where it's a tax that you collect on behalf of the state, like you collect and remit to your local area tax or anything like that, Airbnb usually will just pass it through completely whole. So you don't have to worry about them collecting a commission off of that. But if you do anything like charging for a pool fee or anything like that, those would also have to get updated. And a lot of people, if they have like a pool fee, like a pool heat fee or anything like that, it's also usually in the listing. So you want to double check there as well, because if all of a sudden now your pool fee goes from being, $25 a day to being closer to, let's say, like $30 a day, if it still says 25 in your listing, a guest can come push back and say, hey, that's not what it says in your description. So be sure if you have any fees like that you usually list out, comb through there. Same thing with your pet fees as well. Anything that can get added on at the time of purchase. Now, obviously, like if a guest, like if you're doing like a guest adding on a night, like after they've already booked, that still becomes a little bit of a murky area just because Airbnb sometimes would collect a less commission on that from the guest side of things. So we're not 100% sure what they're going to do from the host side now that it's all on us.
I think you're right about the taxes because, well, at least in our situation, Airbnb collects the occupancy taxes on our behalf and sends it to the government. But those taxes are going to go up, but they're paid directly by the guests. So it doesn't affect our payout. But I do think that because in our scenario in Idlewild in California, we paid 10%. So if our nightly rate was 100 and our cleaning fee was 100 in the old scenario, now our nightly rate is going to be 114.79. And now our cleaning fee is also going to be 14.79. So essentially, occupancy taxes, guests are going to be paying 14.979% more occupancy taxes. So essentially, stays are going to be a little bit more expensive for our guests. And the government is going to collect more money.
Depends though, because it depends on if the Airbnb service fee was a factor of that. Sometimes they do count as conditions of the stay. It depends on how the local regulations have it worded. So for example, in the city of Destin, in the panhandle of Florida, they have it worded where the tourism tax is only collected on conditions of the stay. So like if it's a required condition of the stay, they collect the tax. Like for example, you don't need to have the pool heated to stay in a property. Since it's optional, they don't collect the tax on that. But the cleaning fee is required because we have to clean up after you. So they do require the tax on that side of things. So it's going to be, if it wasn't a gray area already, it's just going to get grayer.
Either way, the governments are going to collect more taxes. Or maybe it depends a little bit on the region, but at least for us in Idlewild, from what I see is, we charge, it's 10% on nightly rate plus cleaning fee, and those are both going up. So the taxes are going to go up. So it's not, I guess that's the only real drawback of this whole switch is that it just becomes a little bit more expensive for the guest, which means probably it will hurt demand a little bit. So hopefully not too much. Awesome, guys. So Mouse, anything else we should cover on this topic? Anything else that I may have forgotten?
Not that I can think of. Just from my personal recommendation and what I'm recommending to all of our clients is look at where you already are and make your decision off of that. You want to be as competitive as possible while still making sure that your pockets are whole. So
exactly,
don't just take this as an opportunity to throw your commission up just because you can't. Oh yeah, you know what? We can mark up to whatever. Don't just go from 0 to 20%. You want to take the smallest amount of increase that you can to make sure you're whole without going past that point.
Exactly. And if you want to know what that percentage should be based on what you're currently marking up your Airbnb channel, then go to Freewyld foundry.com/markup and you'll get access to an awesome calculator that Miles and I put together. And that's going to make your life a lot easier because these calculations can get pretty complicated. All right. Well, that is it for today, everybody. So thank you for listening. Miles, thanks for joining your first Get Paid for Your Pad podcast. I'm sure it's not the last one.
Woo. Can we put the link in the show notes? I've always wanted to say that. The link's in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes,
someone will do
the link
it.
is in the show notes. Look below. All right, everybody. Have a great week.
All right.
Miles, thanks for joining, man.
Anytime.
I'm sure we'll have you on again, and we'll be back with more episodes every single week. Get paid for your pad. See you soon.
Get paid for your pad. Get